Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, bringing you this fan-based but band-endorsed podcast. Thank you very much, Mick Box and Uriah Heep, for the endorsement. Wouldn't be doing this otherwise. So today we have part one of a two-part song, Astranaza. This is not me breaking up the episode this time. I do that sometimes when the episodes are a little bit longer, so you have more bite-sized pieces to digest. I've been doing that since the beginning, and not this time, though. That's not me. That's the band. This is how it's broken up on the album as parts 1 and 2. So we're going to start, obviously, with part 1. And I have to admit, this is one I did listen to, and the reason I listened to it ahead of time, because normally I don't if I don't know the song, so we get a first-time reaction. But I had to, when I went to create the web page, I realized I didn't know where the break in the lyrics was, if all the lyrics were in part 1 and not part 2. So I had to listen through it to get the lyrics down so I could set up the web page. But apart from that, I have not listened to these songs. Yeah, it's a good song. It's a really good song. I really enjoy it. I love the feel of it. I love the vocal. I love the music. It's really just one of those songs that draws you in and you wish there was more of. So without further ado, we're going to thank some people because you know what? It's Monday. And historically, that's what we do on this show. We thank the people that help make the show what it is. And first of all, I want to thank BMG for releasing the Everyday Rocks box set, 7 picture discs, 7 t-shirts, wall calendar, inspiring lyric cards. You can get it right now, although the quantities are running out, guys. Some of the shirt sizes are no longer available. I don't know if they'll do another run of this in the future. So if you want it, grab it now. You can get that at uriah-heep.com. There's a store where you can purchase all of this stuff. It's really cool. Also, the Choices box set, which has CDs from band members present and past, their choices on if you were to try and get into Uriah Heep or get somebody into Uriah Heep, what songs would they suggest that you play for them or play for yourself? And those are on these CDs. Obviously, there are certain limitations. You're probably not going to pick a 16-minute song like Salisbury, an 11-minute song like Magician's Birthday, or whatever the track time is on that, because you want to maximize as much time on that CD as you can, since CDs were limited in time. So pick up Choices. It's very reasonably priced and really gives you some insight into the band and some really great selections and some different perspectives, which I really like. Some crossover, but really different perspectives. So also, of course, we want to thank our patrons at the $5 Easy Living tier. We have Brad D and Kenny Wymore. At the $3 The Wizard tier, we have none other than William Rose, Frank Teelgaard Mortensen, and Peter Voss. And at the $1 Traveler in Time tier, we have the mystery box that keeps on giving you nothing, Airtight Gray Site. Thank you all very, very much. Your donations to the show that have been ongoing for quite some time now have helped me pay for basically for the show to exist. So thank you very, very much for your generosity. It also gives me a good bit of emotional support to know that something that I created has inspired people to actually want to put money towards it when they don't have to. So that's, that just goes to show the reality behind it. There's no need to suck up or anything here. It's people that just genuinely wanted to help pay for what they get out of this show, and I appreciate that very, very much. Before we get rolling here, I also want to say thanks to Cakewalk by BandLab. They are the digital audio workstation in which I create and edit the show. Podbean is the company that releases the show to all of the different outlets. Anywhere you're listening to it now, it got there by Podbean, including my own website, because I use their player on the main page and also the individual song pages. That all comes from them. Thank you very much. My graphic artist, Scott Lazinski, who drew up amazing logos for the show, both the day and night logos. Audionamics, I will not do a podcast without IDC, Instant Dialogue Cleaner. While this show is coming out, actually, I should be in Anaheim at the NAMM show, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up with my friends at Audionamics. It's been a while. It's been 2.5 years since the last NAMM show. and looking forward to seeing them again and catching up with all the people that are going. It's going to be interesting this year because I don't know who's going. A lot of people are not that I've talked to, just because international travel isn't 100% yet, and maybe some of them have some concerns. Maybe they're worried that not enough people are going to show up, so it's not worth the expense of setting up their booths. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless. But I know Audionamics is going to be there. Very excited to reconnect with them. Also, over at Isotope, I use their D-Click, and that is from the RX series of products, which is a fantastic restoration suite. It's really pretty amazing. I also want to thank Waves. I use their vocal writer, Sibilance. I can't say the word that talks about dialogue. Sibilance and Deep-Breath on their show just helps kind of clean up some of the artifacts in there and keeps the show sounding pristine. And also through Cakewalk by BandLab, the Sonatus compressor. I do that just to help even things out a little bit more. And also, of course, you know him from several episodes of the show, including all of last season, Dave White, Uriah Heep's director of social media. He does such a great job with the websites. We talked about that on the Magician's Birthday episode, everything that he's been through to put that together, the hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's absolutely insane, everything he's got there on uriah-heep.com and mick-box.net. All some great stuff. Thank you, Dave, for all the work that you do. Thanks for joining me last season. It was an absolute blast. I also want to thank everyone who has shared this show on their social medias and just told people about it, because that has been what has helped the growth of listeners over the year and a half that the show has been on the air. So thank all of you. Now, of course, I got to talk about my brothers in the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Nate and John over at the Deep Purple Podcast, my gateway drug. Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered, Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side, Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David at the In the Lap of the Pods Podcast, Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z Pod, Daniel and Josh at Diary of the Madmen, the Ultimate Ozzy Podcast, Ben and Sam at Universally Speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers Podcast, George and Tom at the Metal Gods Podcast, Mark and Corey at the Podcast Will Rock, Corey and John at Backtracks, Aerosmith Revisited, and Clay and Rye at North by South. Also, want to give a big shout out to my buddy Brandon over at Metallicast, and Allegra over at GottaHear'Em.com, digging into the live histories of Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and a whole bunch more stuff. Lots of great trivia and tidbits over there. And of course, Uriah Heep's manager, Ace. He has his show Ace on Music on Stitcher and Ace the Music Man on YouTube. Some great stuff, deep info into the music industry, as he has so much experience. He's been around for a while. He's seen a lot of things. He's looking at trends that are happening, trends that are looking at coming down the road, all kinds of stuff, great information. He's got a great DJ voice too. So check out Ace on Music on Stitcher and Ace the Music Man on YouTube. Now, that being said, all of that being covered, I say we get right into the song. What do you say? Astranaza, Part 1. Very interesting. I can hear the guitar in the left ear and a little bit of the delay of the guitar over in the right ear. I love that sound. Very 60s sound. I'm hearing a little bit of backing vocals. I don't know if that is just David backing himself on a separate track or if somebody's actually singing along with him. Either way, it sounds really cool. The song has got a nice groove to it, doesn't it? And of course, Paul is just on fire here. That ride cymbal's cutting a little bit through, just for my taste. But again, we're looking at a brick wall limited waveform. But since there were not a huge amount of layers instrument-wise, it's one thing that really helps cut down the chatter when you're brick wall limiting. And it helps save some of that from getting all muddied up. But it sounds really good. I really like the feel of this one, especially the vocal there when he goes in the beginning. Very unique. The songs that were coming out around this time, too, a lot of them, they're not standard verse, chorus kind of thing. Some of them are, but even within that, there's a lot of uniqueness to each song. You don't really know what you're going to get. drummers were very active during this period, as we've heard now on 2 songs from Alex. But a very cool feel to it. And just again, that delay that's on everything really gives it that 60s sound. Oh, another album I could compare the sound to, thinking about bands like The Guess Who, I could go that route. But certainly The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, that album with, you might know the song Fire, which was actually Carl Palmer on drums from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But that song, that album had a very similar production to it. There was a lot more going on with the organ on that album. But it had that same kind of feel to it, the overall production of the album. And it really made Arthur Brown's voice unique. I think it's definitely putting a unique spin on David's voice here as well, but also the guitars, everything. But it's pretty cool. I'm digging this song. So I've never been a huge fan of vocal parts like this. I like it from a musical perspective, but as far as like listening to a vocalist, if he were saying words here, it's just really like just mumbling or chanting to me. It's not something that I've ever really enjoyed. But here we have 2 songs so far that we've listened to, and both songs had at least a little part like this. But you could see where they were kind of heading with songs down the road, where they would take this idea and just expand on it and blow it into something that was really cool. But I like the precision that I'm hearing between Paul and David. I think it's really fantastic. So I think this song, too, is giving us a good glimpse as to what would eventually turn into Uriah Heep and the direction they would go in, because I definitely see some roots here. I love how progressive it is. I mean, basically on the drums and the bass, there's just so much going on. There's so much to listen to, and the fills are really cool, very energetic, and just very well performed. And, of course, I'm a huge fan of Paul's playing on the song. Just overall, just great. I haven't really noticed any keyboards or pianos, but maybe they'll shine through a little bit later. I can't say I've ever heard a riff quite like this going on behind the vocals there. It's really, really cool what Mick and Paul are playing. That tambourine is a little bit on the tinny side, since everything else is a little bit muddier and darker sounding as far as the treble goes. Not bad by any means, just compared to the tambourine. That's kind of a little crisp and clear cutting through. But yeah, very cool. I find this song one that just draws me in. It's got so much going on. There's so much to pay attention to all at once. And yet the vocals, oddly enough, are really grabbing me, which normally they don't.
In the beginning, we were the only one. In the beginning, oh, the mother of my son.
So back when I recorded the very first song review episode of this show, which was Gypsy, I talked about the intro to Gypsy and how the fact that there were no click tracks back then. Everybody had to be playing together. Everybody had to know the tempo, know their count, know where they were supposed to be. And this is another perfect example of that. I mean, they are playing so tight, but there's nothing guiding them. It's really just them knowing where they're supposed to be and playing together as musicians for the song. And I really think that this came out great, especially when you consider that we don't have those safety nets in this episode.
In the beginning, you were the only one. In the beginning.
So when I've talked about how these songs sound a little bit dark and this era of music tended to sound a little bit dark, listen to that reverb. I mean, rewind this 10 seconds and listen to the isolated vocal with the reverb. I mean, there is something about that type of reverb that really just makes it feel a little bit darker for me, you know, and we all know what David sounds like. We've heard everything he recorded with the band. And so to hear him sound like this, you know, obviously pre-Uriah Heep, but it's still his voice. And he sang like this quite a bit during his tenure in Uriah Heep. So we know that a lot of this is the production, and that reverb is something that you hear on so many songs from this era of music. And, you know, I think about how much it was on the Motown songs and stuff like that. And boy, it really did shape the way production sounded, didn't it?
Everybody had their fun.
Very unexpected part there. I love the beat. Again, you know, just showing how progressive these guys could be even in the very early days of what would eventually become Uriah Heep. And you can hear that same reverb on Paul's bass too here. Maybe there's a little bit of chorus on it, I'm not sure, but it just has that same feel that I'm getting from David Byron's vocals. Again, that's the production of it. But listen to what he's playing. He's so talented. So that's it. That's where they decided to end part one. And I think it's cool. That was such a fun part. It's an interesting beat for the drummer to play. That extra snare accent makes it a little bit challenging to come into the next snare hit at full power, because you don't want to play that accent too hard, but you definitely want it pronounced. So that's some really good playing from Alex. And I love what Mick is doing there. First chance we've really had to hear any kind of soloing in this. It would be as close as they come, but that's a fun part. I really like that whole section there. So that'll do it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me for the Monday episode. I hope it started your week off with a smile. We'll be back tomorrow for part 2. Cheers! Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!